Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. My name is Kris and I am your host, and I'm delighted to say we're back again to get together with our football-loving chums, because I don't know if you've heard this, dear listener, but there is a competition on the way called the Euros. It used to be called Euro 2020, but then the world kind of stopped, didn't it? It kind of went a bit wonky. So welcome, Euro 2021. / it was 2020, depending on your merchandise. Insert random quotation here. So this is what we're going to be doing for the next 4 to 5 weeks, I think, of tournaments. We're going to kind of just cover as many of the games as we can in large blocks. So the plan moving forwards is we're going to do a preview show tonight, having a look at the groups and a couple of the stand-up teams, stand-up players, etc. Little light conversation for your ears. And then moving forwards, we're aiming to record after every set of games. So what that basically means for you guys and girls listening is after all the first team, all the teams have played one game, basically, we will bring you a podcast, and after the second and third, etc. and so on, and then into the final stages, all being well. Of course, we're all working folk, so times and appearances and members may be subject to change. But without further ado, I should introduce my panel, because after all, they are the talent. I am just the monkey grinding the organ. First of all, good evening to the man on cam. It's Mr. Josh Dorr. How you doing, Josh?
Hey, Kris. I think it's been a while since I've been on a Hipsters as well. So, yeah, it's not just because I was the only one that knows how to press the buttons, I think.
It's definitely not that, no, because if I'd have wanted just a button monkey, we all know who we go to for that. So
that's true.
And he's probably still in bed right now. But no, I'm very much here for you to fight the good cross of St George's. I'm sure you will do.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I am already depressed about this England side.
Oh, God, if England win this tournament, I'll never hear the end of it. Anyway, it's a very you've gone very continental with the beard there. Dare I say it's almost a little German.
I'm not sure what my forefathers will think about that, but yeah, we can. It's going some way.
Yes,
we'll see. It definitely needs a trim. We'll put that in there, but it's a whole new background for ABWers to look through, and some of the hybrid things sneaking in there. And if anybody gets the team of the canvas that I've got on the back,
I know who it is. Then
you'll be all right. Maybe we'll talk about it post show.
I'm pretty sure I know who it is. So yes, we will cover that off camera. Right. We've also got two cameraless fiends this evening, mainly because they've got bits and bobs going on. So let's go ladies first. Lana, how you doing?
I am great. We can shortly explain why I'm without a camera. I had an accident with a clothing rack, so I have a giant bruise in my face. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the clumsy me is back. So yeah, you wouldn't believe it if I spoke about it. So, but I am actually really excited because, unlike Josh, I actually have a great team.
Yeah, well, I mean, we both follow that great team, but more on that later, because I'm slightly concerned at just how much they're being bigged up, but I guess we'll come to that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure both you and I will be following the exact same two clubs in this particular Euro, so we will get into that. But batting for England alongside Josh, we couldn't have it as a Frenchophone pod all to ourselves, just me and Lana, so we had to bring in some balance. So good evening to Tom, who is backing Josh in the England corner. Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Thank you for having me on. I'm a bit heartbroken because I saw an article, I think, on Gareth's not wearing his beloved waistcoat for this tournament by the sounds of it, so I don't know if we'll go all the way this time. But
what is that about? He's gone very Tony Soprano, hasn't he, with this suit? Well, I don't really know what he's going for there. It's a bit...
I thought it was the Zara pajamas. Was the shirt from the first friendly was very interesting, to say the least. Definitely a set of pajamas. So maybe he's not packing too heavily and expecting a long stay.
Maybe he's just trying to distract people from the inevitably bad football that we might be playing at the tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
14 right backs, yeah. Do you know what I would love to see? I know we had Nagelsmann in the Champions League Leipzig with that very interesting suit that even I would be quite happy to wear personally with my awful fashion sense. But I'd love to see like a manager in just do you remember the Hawaiian shirts off the 90s? You know, or like one of those shirts with flames up it, you know, that all the kind of new metal kids used to wear. I'd love that. You know, or just a guy on the sidelines like a pair of like jorts with high tops, you know, just casually surfer duding it, you know.
I'm not sure which proportion of our listeners I want to offend first with which competition I might say are most likely to see those things in.
Well, I mean, go for gold, really.
Maybe I'll just say Yogi loves, you know, it's his last tournament. Maybe he's going to go all out and set a lederhosen on the sideline with a little flap just for him to do his scratch and sniff.
Yeah, scratch and sniff. OP. Yeah, that's an interesting one. God bless him. Anyway, right, let's get into it then. So, first things first, I'm going to go to you, Josh, first of all, because we had a little chat pre-pod about the sort of the group standings and how it all works. So for anyone, including me, who may be just a little bit out of the loop in terms of what teams are in what groups and how the qualification process goes, would you like to just read down groups A to F, teams involved, and who or what can qualify from those for us?
Yeah, so we'll kind of start. There is, I've counted them this time, so I'm not going to say there's F number of groups that I did pre-pod. There are 6 of them in total. Top 2 from each one makes it through to the round of 16, plus the 4 of the best third place teams. So basically, finish in the top 2, or if you finish third, don't be so shit that basically you end up with 1 or 2 points and you'll probably go through, win a game basically, and you're into the round of 16. And then from there, from that point. But in terms of where it moves from there, we have got Group A, which is Turkey, Italy, Wales, and Switzerland. I think Italy have got the home advantage in that one, and I would say Turkey don't. I think Turkey Turkey don't have home advantage for that one. Just the other thing to add is that some teams, because this is a pan-European Euros, some teams are playing in their own stadia across the tournament. If you're a certain team that is got a white background and a red cross on there, you can more or less play at your home stadium all the way to the final. But we'll get onto that one. No pressure to Denmark. So yeah, that moves us nicely onto Group B, which is Denmark, Finland, Belgium, and Russia. Russia, I think, have got home advantage in that one as well, and Denmark, I think, have also got home advantage. That group is one to look out for as well, because Denmark and Russia have home advantage. Denmark play every single one of their games at home. So when you look at Belgium, who don't have that opportunity, they've basically got 2 away games and a neutral ground venue when they play Finland. So could be difficult for them. Group C, Austria, North Macedonia, the Netherlands, and I would say one of the hipsters' choices, the Ukraine, because I believe they are taking the youngest squad to this Euros. Plenty of teens in there for some people to have a look at. Finally, moving on to the other side of the draw, Group D is the mighty England, Croatia, the mighty Scots, and the Czech Republic. England and Scotland have got the home advantage in that one. Big game for England, Scotland. I'm sure we'll talk about that one later. Group E is Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden. I'm sure Lana could jump in straight away and tell me if Sweden was having any games there. I know Spain are holding it in Sevilla after moving from Bilbao. And finally, Group F is Hungary, who are very annoyed because when I read the rest of these teams, they're thinking, well, what's the point? Just packing up the bag, boys. Portugal, so European champions. France, world champions, and some other nation called Germany, also in that group. So yeah, there you go, Kris. That is a roundup of everybody we will be seeing at this tournament.
Fantastic. Excuse me. That particular last group, was it something like 9 major European world honours between the 3 major clubs and, well, between all the clubs, because of course Hungary used to be a major nation back in the day. So
yeah, and France just a new nation, but they formed in 1998. France.
Fuck off, Josh.
Yeah, do your history or get out. Right, we won't go into how long it's been since England won anything. We'll just move swiftly on.
1991. Was it 97?
Right, yeah, a semi-final doesn't count as winning anything, by the way, as Spurs fans. Right, let's get into these kind of groups then. So as I say, tonight's show is kind of going to be really just looking at. We're just going to kind of run through the groups rather than the individual matches as such, but we will just pick up on a few bits and bobs. So, Lana, I'll start with you. Group A, so Italy, Switzerland, Turkey, and Wales. Who do you fancy to pick out of this group? Because the opening game is on Friday. We're recording this on the Tuesday before, so 3 days' time. It sees Italy face Turkey. There's a lot of talk about Turkey. I didn't even plan that. There's a lot of Turkey talk. But there's also a lot of people saying that Italy might be dark horses, you being a Juve follower. What's your sort of thoughts on Italy and Turkey being the favourites? And are we doing a disservice to Wales and Switzerland based on Switzerland are very kind of organised and structured, and Wales, they proved in the last Euros, you just never know what you're going to get with them?
I feel like this is a very open group. Just given the fact that the aging squad of Italy, I don't like Turkey, but I actually feel like Switzerland and Wales, not that I'm very familiar with Wales with the exception of Ramsey and Bale, I feel like Switzerland really deserves more credit just in terms of the qualifying round they had, and they actually have very good players. Doesn't Xhaka play for Switzerland?
I was going to say they've got very good players and Granit Xhaka, so that's...
Yeah, I know you guys aren't big fans of him. I like him just for the fact that he told you all to, F off. But I feel like, I think that Switzerland might actually do really well. Italy, obviously, are favorites, just because it's Italy. And they can, go through on their classic 1-0 wins. But as I said, it's a very open game. It's
Well, Lana's gone very quiet there. What have you done, Josh? What have you done?
I've done nothing.
Have you intercepted her?
Yeah,
okay.
No, it was that Granit Xhaka comment, and that was it. I was cutting her off. No,
the wires were gone.
I was going to pick this up on Italy as well in Lana's quietness as well. I think this is a really exciting Italy team that they're taking out with them. It's really interesting squad, especially with Verratti. Doesn't look like he necessarily gets in straight away. Locatelli, who is the darling, I think, of transfer rumours, should we say, flying around. And it's almost going to be a tale, I think, of which team's actually got a striker. And Belotti, I think, again, outside of Serie A, people might not have heard of him. He's a very interesting striker to look at. And I think as well, if we can get Nico Barrea firing, you'll know as an Inter fan just how talented that boy is. And I think this could be potentially Italy coming out of that kind of assumption that they are the 1-0 to Italy. That being said, I could also see them completely screwing up the group and ending up finishing second or third.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of players in there. I was looking at the squad earlier on. Dominica Berardi of Sassuolo's had a really good season as well. Federico Chiesa's had a breakthrough season at Juventus, which Lana may be able to mention when she comes back in. The other one to probably just keep an eye on is Giacomo Raspadori, who I believe is also Sassuolo. He's the young lad who nobody really knows too much about. I think there's a little bit of. I think he's 18. Is he 18? I want to say he's 8, or is he 21? No, he's 21. Yeah. So he may be one to keep a lookout for, because he's probably the Theo Walcott of Italy's team that nobody quite knows what to expect, if anything, It could be everything. It could be nothing. We just never know. Lana, you're back with us?
Yeah, I think Josh jinxed me or something because it just I couldn't hear anything or that's
Josh
really
pulled
rude.
the plug when you mentioned Xhaka. So we were just saying about the Italy squad, and we were talking about Berardi and Chiesa's form. Chiesa probably the one I'm going to ask. Sorry, go on.
I love him so much. Honestly, he should have been our player of the season. I do not understand why Cristiano Ronaldo continues to get that prize because he was dog shit. I hope no Juve fans are I hope no Juve fans are listening. Yeah, but that Italy squad, I cannot believe that Bernardeschi gets to get a spot. But I'm more surprised that he didn't bring Moussa Kean with them, just because he had a really good season at PSG. I feel like I watched most of their games. He had a really good season, better than Icardi, if you're supposed to compare the two impact subs. So they have goal scoring midfielders, so I wouldn't be worried so much about that. I think it's probably more the defense because it's so aging. And the fact that
Chiellini and Bonucci, yeah. Like 50 odd between them, I think they are. It's the experience, but if you've got any brains about you when you're playing Italy, you play a pacey striker, don't you? That's going to be the slight concern with those two. But the experience is there, so if it goes down to a bit of the dark arts, you back them to progress, I would guess, from that group. Tom, I want to ask you. I don't know whether you've had too much to sort of look into this group as well, but being an England fan, what's your sort of views on the Welsh and also that Turkey side? Because as I said at the off, there is this sort of quiet optimism, I think, amongst the Super League fans and Turkish football followers that they might just have a dark horse slot. They've got the old manager back in town. I think he's managed previously, and they've got that squad that just looks exciting. A couple of Lille players there, Yazici, Burak Yilmaz has been brilliant. Zeki Çelik is in there. Do you fancy Wales or Turkey to upset the apple cart and maybe get through in this group ahead of Italy?
I wouldn't say ahead of them. No, I think the squad that Italy has, I think it's a good mixture. There's one extreme to the other. You've got very experienced players like Bonucci and Chiellini. I think they've got over 200 appearances between them. And I think when it comes to these tournament settings, your experience can be so fundamental in those big moments in big games. I don't think they'll beat Italy to that top spot, but I think Lana mentioned, I think the remaining three in that group, I could kind of see it swinging either way, to be honest. It wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing one of those groups where it kind of gets locked out for the remaining spots and maybe a goal difference is the difference between them, because there are a couple of good players, like as you mentioned in that Turkish squad. I believe is it Under as well, a name that springs to mind. I haven't seen huge amounts of him, but from what I hear, he's a very talented player, and you've got to be careful when you start to underestimate these teams that you might think, oh well, we've got a 3 points here. As an England fan, you'll realise you come up against a team, you think, oh, this will be easy, and then next thing you know, it's 0-0, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, we need to start getting 3 points out of this, because these group games can be over so quickly, and the next thing you know, you're scrapping just to even try and get through to the next stage. So I think Wales, I don't know I think Turkey I'd put ahead of them, maybe ever so slightly. I just think the talent that they've got in that Turkish side, it can be hit and miss, but I think if they turn up, I think they can give anyone a good game if they perform well. I think the Welsh squad, I think their quality players, I think, are starting to age a little bit more now. I think the players coming through, like I suppose you could mention maybe Dan James, but then on the flip side, you've got like Gareth Bale, Ramsey. They're not over the hill just yet, but they're starting to get towards the later stages of their career. And I think the lack of like that standout quality, I think they might struggle unless, I say, if Bale comes out firing, maybe, or luckily if he has a free kick against a very terrible goalie like he did in the last Euros. I think it'll be a really good group to see. I think that one might get overlooked by a lot of people just looking at the teams and the names. Everyone will obviously be looking towards that group of death, but I think that one will be quite an interesting one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, a couple of other aging players in that Welsh squad, like Ben Davies. I think the goalkeepers Hennessy and Ward are getting on a bit, and Joe Allen is still anchoring their midfield. And some sort of debate as whether he's going to be fit. I think the name that everyone's keeping an eye on is Ruben Colwill, this uncapped prior to the tournament. I think he's 18-year-old Cardiff player who people think potentially is going to be a very big future star. So that is Group A. Josh, I'll start with you in Group B. This one's got a bit of a look of a dark horse group, hasn't it? Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Russia. Naturally, I think that the eyes turn towards Belgium, kind of acing this group with the likes of De Bruyne and Lukaku off his best season in his club career. The aging defence might be a concern later on in the tournament, but you feel like they'll probably have enough to fire their way through in terms of top spot. But Denmark, Finland, Russia, it's a bit of a coin toss, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as I alluded to when we're running through the groups, I think the home advantage, whilst we don't know how big that's going to be for certain teams, the fact that Belgium have basically got to play fundamentally 2 away games, plus then just the neutral game against Finland. So I think they'll probably get past Finland. I don't think that's a particularly strong squad, but it's one that I think Belgium could kind of scrape through on this one, or they'll fly through and we'll go, I don't know what everybody was talking about. That there's no problems here at all. There are a couple of names in that squad that I think the Belgian squad, I don't think De Bruyne is fit for that first game, but there's some big names around there that I think will be interesting. And also, this is most likely Martinez's last tournament at the helm. I'm imagining there's a job in North London with his name on it when he becomes available. But when you get to Denmark, I think it's one of the things that I like about international football is there's not always necessarily standout teams there. There's always 6 or 7 dark horses. When you look at a league campaign, you're normally talking about 2 or 3 teams that are probably, in some cases, maybe even just one team that's probably going to take the title, 2 others that will ride the coattails for them for a bit and then eventually drop off. In this, you've got teams like Denmark and you're like, you know what, they could do something. They have got, Anders Christian, Kasper Schmeichel in goal, Anderson, who I think Lana knows from Lyon, and obviously had a great season at Fulham, came back in. The defence is completely, you say, is rock solid, plus Thomas Delaney in the midfield as well.
Simon Kjær has been brilliant for AC Milan this year as well. Yeah. He's been really good. And Daniel Vass at Valencia has been really, really good for a while. So agreed.
Yeah, that's why I said there's something in here. I think a lot of these teams are all about, if they can score, you'd say that in theory they should be able to, shut up shop. Can add more names to it as well in terms of Højbjerg, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Yusuf Poulsen, particularly to be getting the goals for them, because I think him and Eriksen could create a great partnership that gets them through, maybe even upsetting a couple and booking a place in quarterfinals.
They drew against Germany the other week, and they have I think they have 22 goals scored in the last 5. I think they scored 8 against some team, beat Austria huge numbers as well, and Bosnia the other day. So they're collectively a really good team, and their under 21 is amazing as well. So they were in.
It's weird, isn't it? Because Kasper Dolberg hasn't had a great season for Nice. Martin Braithwaite has barely played for Barcelona. Andreas Cornelius had that pretty poor time of it when he came. I think he played for Cardiff, wasn't it, as well?
It was Cardiff, yeah.
Yeah, and even Poulsen hasn't exactly torn it up in Bundesliga this year. I think he was very good last year. He hasn't played as many times for Leipzig this year. So, it does sort of give a look of that, where the goal's coming from. But then, as you said, their pre-tournament stats speak otherwise.
So they're all strikers. So they're all strikers that you'd kind of back to be quite streaky, and it's just a case of the manager identifying which one is going to score 5 goals in 3 games. Because you could any of those strikers, you're going to say they'll score 5 goals. They'll get the goals quickly, and then they'll just completely go off the boil. And it's just making sure that he picks the right one at that moment and gets them through it.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, agreed. No, that's fine. That's no problem at all. I want to ask you before we move on to the next group, Lana. I just want to Finland and Russia. Is it a straight shootout between them two for third place? I mean, I think if you look at that Belgium squad, that there's just too much talent, even with a questionable manager. I think it would be fair to say there's too much talent in that side to not go through, and I feel like Denmark will probably be the ones that will come through in second, or maybe pit Belgium, depending on how it goes. But Finland and Russia, I mean, is there anything you see in either of those squads that makes you think they might cause a bit of an upset? Like, could Finland be the new Iceland, for example?
I mean, fun fact, this is Finland's first male tournament. So this is the first time during a Euro or a World Cup. So that's like, I think it's amazing. They had a really good qualifier. It's nice to see more Scandinavian countries as well in it. But I feel like Russia could be a potentially really dark horse if we go back to the World Cup, how far they got. Fine, it was on home soil, but I wouldn't underestimate them. I haven't had a chance to look at their squad, so I don't know if it's a young, old, in the middle, but
it's mixed. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah. They tend to show up. That's the thing. Like, as Josh said, you can't really pick out clear favorites because it's anyone's games, especially when it comes to, big tournaments. So Finland could be the new Iceland, but then again, I wouldn't discount Russia either. They might just go on to upset and win the group. We don't know.
Yeah, very true. And as much as I promised myself I wouldn't make this joke, I'm going to. I'm sure with Artem Juba, with his hands-on approach, I'm sure Russia will be fine. If you haven't seen the video, for God's sake, don't Google it at work. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move hastily onwards to Group C, where I'll start with you, Tom, on this one. We've got Austria, the Netherlands, or Holland if you prefer. The Netherlands is the correct term, but, whatever you fancy. North Macedonia, with the fantastic flag, and Ukraine, who Josh mentioned. I just always assume when you think Ukraine, I just assume Shevchenko and Rebrov up front and some 50-year-olds at the back. You just assume they're an old kind of shithouse of a team and they've got nothing else. But apparently, as Josh quite rightly said, they've got a youthful squad. Who are you looking at in this group? I mean, I guess Netherlands stand out because it's the Netherlands, but they are managed by a man who I don't really know what Frank de Boer is. I just don't get it. He was fired from Atlanta. He was fired from Crystal Palace. He's not had a particularly good managerial career, and he's trying to force this three at the back thing on the Dutch, which just doesn't seem to work. On paper, their squad is fantastic, though. Do you think the squad alone carries Netherlands through this group, despite the manager? And which of those other three, do you, if any of them, do you think stand out in that particular group to challenge them?
I think with Netherlands, I've got a feeling this tournament could either go very well for them or, on the flip side, absolutely terribly for them. I think that first game we'll probably see what kind of Netherlands we're going to get. In previous tournaments, we've had some where they've been absolutely outstanding and others where they've underperformed incredibly. They do have some real quality players in that team. So the likes of like Memphis Depay, Matthijs de Ligt as well. If he shows up on his day, he can be a really, really good player for them. Still very young as well. They've got that mixture of experience, along with some younger players that are starting to come through. But I think, it's going to be. I think that first game again. I think that's the one where I think we'll be able to see whether they're going to start to push through and potentially go to the later stages, or whether it's just going to go tits up for them really quickly. And it could be one of those more embarrassing ones. I think the teams that they've got in the group, it's set up for them to have a good go at it and come and show everyone kind of the talented players that they do have in the squad. I think apart from, I'd say maybe Ukraine as a potential. I don't know too many players off the top of my head. I know Zinchenko, obviously he's a decent player. They've got a couple of kind of standard household names in there, but they're starting to age a little bit as well. But apart from that, you've got to stick your finger on them to really take that group, I think, with the other teams in there. But then again, in a tournament, it comes down to such small moments. If a team, like you guys mentioned with Denmark, they're such a good team at moments, especially in tournaments, that sometimes that can be the difference maker. You can have teams with real quality players, but if they don't mesh and they don't act as a unit in a knockout tournament, when it can come down to one moment in one game or just being consistent throughout the group, it can start to go downhill no matter how good quality players you've got in that group. So I think, yeah, my head's saying the Netherlands they'll take that one comfortably, but I don't want to jinx it, and then they go away with maybe like 1 point for the group. So
yeah. I'll let this fact sink in that Daley Blind is still a Dutch international, and Tim Krul, of course, is on the squad list. So if the Dutch get through and there's a penalty shootout,
he's playing in goal.
We'll see a repeat of the Mexico game in the World Cup. The one player that I'm kind of excited about, I don't know if he'll get into any games, but Ryan Gravenberch at Ajax looks just a monster. I think he's got everything. If the career goes in the path that it looks like it's going to go, he's built essentially like Patrick Vieira was in his youth. He's got everything about his game, and same with Frankie De Jong, who's had a really good season at Barcelona. And I think Depay and Donyell Malen are going to carry the goal threat. They
usually, Chris, they usually have players in these tournaments. I think you mentioned De Jong. I think he had. Was it the World Cup? He had a really good tournament, and that's almost where he put himself on the map. And they always seem to have every year maybe that one, maybe two players who are incredibly young. They come into the team, and then all of a sudden you see in the transfer window they're being linked with the likes of Madrid, Barcelona, all these massive household names, just where they have an incredible tournament at such a young age.
Yeah, it's true that. Quincy Promes is on that list as well. I presume nothing has come of this case about him potentially having some legal issues, shall we say. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but he's an interesting name on that list. You wanted to mention something there, Josh?
Yeah, it reads as a squad that could be let down by the manager, basically, because that is a very exciting group of players that could be put together. I think Van der Beek just picked up an injury and fell out of that squad. Stefan Bergwijn, I'm assuming, is also injured. Or he's not Dutch. I thought he was.
No, he is.
He is Dutch. Yeah. So there's a couple of players missing out from that regard. But as you say, like, you could build the most exciting team out of that, and attacking, expansive, like you'd imagine the Dutch teams of old to be like. But again, it could be the manager puts it together and just creates a drab team. And I think it's going to be an interesting one to look at fundamentally. And I think that's the one to potentially be held back by their manager.
Yeah, agreed. And seeing as I've just got you for a second before we do move on, so Andrei Shevchenko is the coach of Ukraine. That blows my mind in a good way. Looking at their squad, there's a lot of names I'll hold my hands up and say some I've heard of but don't know a lot about. The ones that stand out are Ukraine naturalized Marlos, who of course was born in Brazil. Shakhtar Donetsk, he's on his day at a match winner. Andrei Yarmolenko, of course, West Ham fans may just about remember. We mentioned Zinchenko. The one that stands out for me is Ruslan Malinovsky, who I believe is Atalanta. He's had a very good season. He's probably the string puller in that midfield. Is there any hipster names that you happen to have researched any into them at all, or is it just your gut feeling they might be a bit of a surprise?
So they've got Mikalenko, which I think, it's a Dynamo Kiev is one to look out for. I believe Arsenal fans, we were linked to Mikola Matvinenko, who was centre back at Shakhtar. I think in general, it's somewhere in the back of my brain that the under-21s team from Ukraine is very, very good. And there's a lot of players that have just kind of come through in here and got their calls up. So it's one to have a look at for sure. It's hipstery mainly because I don't know many people outside of Ukraine that follow Ukrainian football. So I think that's one of the big things to have a look at. It's just some of these players, some names that you won't have seen, won't have heard of. For me, those are a couple that I would have a look at for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And we're not going to go too deep into Macedonia or Austria, basically because we're sort of pushed for time. But I will just mention Goran Pandev, at the grand old age of 76 now, is still leading the line for Macedonia. So that the things you love to see, his hairline disappeared quicker than mine, which is saying something. But God bless him, he is still cracking on hard and fast. So, Lana, I'm going to give you the start to this group because I have a feeling we're going to lean on Tom and Josh quite heavily. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to just come in on this one first of all. Group D sees Croatia, Czech Republic, and England and Scotland, which I don't know quite how to call this group, because putting my kind of bias of not being the biggest English national fan out there, I think it's fair to say they how they're favourites for the tournament does kind of blow my mind a little bit, or one of the favourites.
They are?
But, yeah, well, according to some bookmakers, they are one of the favourites, which
Let me speak to them.
Well,
I just want a word alone.
It does seem odd, doesn't it? But do you think we're kind of overlooking Croatia and Czech Republic a bit too soon? I mean, Croatia have got an ageing squad, but there's a lot of talent still in there. And Czech Republic, they're just one of those sides, aren't they, that, you know, they could be Pavorsky in Euro 96, or they could be, you know, gone within the first two games and be absolutely horrendous and just sit behind the ball for 90 minutes. Are we overlooking those two? And are Scotland a genuine threat to this group as well?
I mean, we seem to forget that Croatia are World Cup finalists. Like, they went to a World Cup final. Just like, I know the World Cup was a long time ago, but we're still, you know, world champions. Let's not forget that. They, you know, fine, it's an aging squad, but they still have some players that have had a really good season. I mean, Ante Rebic had a great season for Milan. So I wouldn't, you know, put it past them. Perisic as well. He's had a good season. They have some really good players in their squad. Fine, they're aging, but as I mentioned with Denmark, they're still so good collectively. They really put in the work, which I just don't feel. I mean, I just don't get the hype with England. No, really, genuinely, no offense. If I were to compare other squads, I just don't get it, because I just haven't seen them collectively play well together. I mean, that's been the issue for so many years, just given the fact that you couldn't play Gerrard and Lampard together for some idiotic reason. And I just feel like whichever group England would be in, they would be labeled favorites, and everyone else would be like, oh, really? We're forgetting Croatia is actually still a really decent side, and Czech Republic could cause an upset because no one believes in them. So they don't have any pressure on them to succeed, which actually could be in their main advantage. I mean, I don't know much about Scotland, to be honest. I didn't even know they were in the Euros. Sorry.
It's all right. We'll lean on Tom and Josh for Scotland. Don't worry. But yeah, I think you make a good point on Croatia, and a couple of players that are a bit under the radar that people will want to keep an eye on is, excuse me, Miroslav Orsic, who's the guy who essentially had a one-man wrecking show against Tottenham in the Europa League. I'm trying really hard not to chuckle, but he's very much a player who's going to be on the move sooner rather than later from Dynamo Zagreb. And one that maybe goes under the radar, but Andrej Kramaric has had a brilliant season for Hoffenheim. One of these standout strikers in Germany this year, and you know, he's one of those strikers that, given a chance, he'll put it away. So there's enough talent in that squad, and Luka Modric is getting up there in years, but still runs Real Madrid's midfield. Dujan Zheleta has had a really good season at Marseille despite their struggles. I'm amazed that Dejan Lovren, the self-professed best defender in the world, is still going strong, as is Domagoj Vida, and his sort of goth type looks is still going strong. But yeah, there's enough talent in that squad. So let's pick on Tom first of all. Then, Tom, give us a case for why England have one of the favourites for this tournament tag. I mean, what do you think to Lana's sort of thoughts in that there's a lot of clearly very talented England internationals? I guess the question to you I've got is, do you trust Southgate to put those talented individuals into the starting lineup? And secondly, how do you get a team to win a Euros with 14 right backs?
Yeah, we'll be very strong down that right-hand side, that's for sure. I think with England, it always seems the fact when you see the team lineup, and it's almost like on FIFA, you look at the team and on paper, you think, like, man for man, it's a really good squad. But then it's completely different when you need to pull the players together and get them to perform as a team. I think we do have quite a fortunate amount of talent going forwards. My concern for the team is usually, well, for this particular tournament, it's going to be the opposite. I think normally we've struggled to have that creative side to the team, but this time I think it's going to be the defensive side that has got me worried. Obviously, Gareth seems to be very set on this 5 at the back formation to protect Mr. T-Rex arms in goals and the kind of the dodgy defense that we can sometimes have. I think every year I tell myself not to get excited. I look at the team sheet, I get excited, and then I see our first game, and then it instantly hits the floor again. And I think, especially with teams like Croatia, that we saw it last time, they have a habit. They can dominate the games, and I think England struggle to really keep possession against teams that have even the slightest bit of ability in midfield. And I really do think that if Bellingham somehow gets into that team, I think he could possibly be the shining light of it, to be honest, because I really don't want to see a situation where we get such a static and rigid centre to England to the point where we're just punting the ball over the top to Rashford and then hoping that we get some sort of set piece goal. Like, I know the whole the love train from the tournament before became a thing, but I think it hid the fact that we weren't as creative as we could have been. I think there's a lot of names in that team where if they get given a license to be creative, and I think if they play with the confidence that they should be, which I think is always flawed in England teams, I think they always seem to go in very rigid, the expectations on them very high, and as soon as they get into that first game and it doesn't quite go as planned, if it ends up with a 0-0 or a 1-0, then all those big household names all of a sudden don't seem to mean anything at all. I think we're a good mixture, I think, of young players. I'd love to see some of the younger players. I'd love to see Foden start. I'd love to see Grealish get a go. I've got a gut feeling that Gareth is going to go for Sterling, but for some reason I just don't feel that he's worthy of going in that team ahead of some other players. I think he's had a few tournaments now to kind of show what he's about, and he's been okay. But like you mentioned, when you see these big household England names and they're tipped to be, I think we're second favourite. I think I saw the other day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you see it as an England fan and you try and have a neutral perspective, obviously you've got the whole, it's coming home, look at the team. But then when you look back at some of the tournaments we've had, we got a very fortunate run in the last one where that should have been a World Cup final for England, if I'm honest. That went tits up very quickly, and people saw it as a very good tournament, which in some ways I can see it. But I think with this one, I don't know. I'm concerned again. I always am before the start of the tournament. I don't know if Southgate's going to be the man who would bring these players together to get them over the line and give them that confidence that they need to go out and show the ability that we've seen that they can have at club level football. I think that's always been the difference for England. Is at club football you can say, yeah, like the likes of Lampard and Gerrard, they do it all the time, and then as soon as they put an England shirt on, they just hit the floor and they're terrible at times. So. I think it's, the bookies are extremely optimistic, even as an England fan, as much as I'd love to see us dominate the tournament, go into the final and then maybe narrowly lose or even win it. I don't know. I don't want to get too carried away with that, to be honest.
No, fair enough. And Josh, as you look at that squad, I mean, there's goals in it in terms of like we know Harry Kane will score goals at every level. He's a proven goal scorer. You know, I can't even take that away from him. Fair play. We know the likes of Marcus Rashford, who's had a pretty poor season in terms of form, but we know on his day is very good. But for me, it's all about that midfield. And you know, as a completely non-biased England person here, I couldn't give a monkeys who they picked, but I would love to see, like Tom said, I'd love to see them go with the likes of Grealish and Mason Mount and Phil Foden. Bellingham, I agree, has got all the potential to be a stand-up player. But the one that really strikes me, sort of that could get into this side and have a real impact, is Calvin Phillips, because I would have him ahead of Jordan Henderson every day of the week. I think he's an exceptional and very underrated midfielder who can go higher than his current club at Leeds at the moment. Is it that midfield that you think is got to be right for England to progress deep into this tournament?
Yeah, I think so. It was the worry when the initial squad was announced that it looked very thin in midfield. Obviously, Gareth called up a number of central midfielders and have subsequently dropped them out. James Ward-Prowse was the main big name for me that missed out. I would say on the opponents in this group as well, since the World Cup, the Nations League has given England another chance to play Croatia, and we've beaten them, and convincingly at that point as well. This Croatia team since that World Cup. Now, maybe they turn it on for the tournaments, and you can argue the Nations League is also a tournament as well. It's how Portugal got their place. If I remember rightly, it was Portugal's the holders of the Nations League. Yeah. That's how they got their place in the tournament. That this is another. That's probably why we're kind of a favourite, because we've then shown that teams that you would say England wouldn't beat, they've come up against, and anybody that's come in front of us, we have at some point beaten them. What I do worry is the route out of the group. It's a very dangerous, very trepidatious exit out of this group. So where we were talking about who certain teams can be matched up with, because there's only 4 third place teams that can come out of them, you're expecting one of those to be from Group F potentially, but that doesn't even matter. So the group of death that we're talking about, it's whoever's second place faces the winner of this group. And if that's England, I'm sure we'll go on to who we think will top that: France, Portugal, Germany group, but you'd have to be very, very lucky if you're facing Hungary, should we say, in the next round. You're potentially picking someone like France, who we've seen notoriously don't necessarily start tournaments as quickly as they could, and you could see another team picking the top spot in that group. That's the kind of worry, but it's also there for the taking. I think the bookies have put a lot of heavy advantage on playing your games at home. So Wembley is going to be huge for England, I think, especially with the capacity available to us. It's bigger than most of the other stadiums because it's 90,000. We can get in under COVID rules, 20 or so thousand at that point. There are some banana skins I can certainly see as well. This Czech Republic side, very big, very physical. Thomas Souček, everybody in the Premier League knows about him. You've got Alex Kral at Spartak Moscow, another player who's very interesting in their midfield. And it's a team that could bully this England side. What we've seen in the friendlies is that my biggest worry is the defence, because it's been pulled out of, there isn't many kind of like combinations in there. Harry Maguire isn't necessarily fit, and for me, I find he can be a bit of a liability. But then you've also got, I can say in the same breath, you've got John Stones there, who has a great season at Manchester City, but he's got it in his locker. And Ben White, who I think absolutely fantastic that he's made the squad. Again, looked a little shaky in there with Tyrone Mings next to him as a partner. Tyrone Mings, again, I think it's been highlighted how shaky he's looked. And he's, as Tom's mentioned, T-Rex arms in goal. If that's the goalkeeper we're going with in Jordan Pickford, that's the problem, that we've got a lot of players here and that we all see very regularly, and everybody could make a combination of a front four or so that would be good enough, I would say, for 95% of any other team in this tournament would take a forward four from our team, from the England squad. Another name that you've not mentioned as well, who I think could take this tournament absolute storm if Southgate gives him the opportunity to do that, and that's Jadon Sancho. Because where I've said the Netherlands team could be made or broken by the manager and his selections, Jadon Sancho for me is an absolute cert at the right wing. But for the want to play him, so he cuts inside. But he has been, I'd say, arguably one of the best players, under 21 this entire season, other than Mbappe, across all leagues. He has been creative. He has been a goal threat. He has just been superb for Borussia Dortmund. And I think there's that kind of nagging thing that because he doesn't play in England, he won't necessarily get the opportunity. I think in terms of what we'll see from Bellingham, I think Bellingham is straight in this squad. He's played significant amounts in this run up to the pre-games, and I could see the forward line, and what I'd kind of want to see from Southgate is just him going, we're going to concede, but let's have some fun, because this team could knock teams for 3 or 4 goals at this level. With that forward line, you could argue they could do it to anybody on their day, and that's what tournament football's about fundamentally. Obviously, the worry happens if you get to the latter stages, but again, the opportunity to have that, the big games with a home-only crowd, because these won't be mixed at this point. I think that's going to be huge for England, and getting behind the team. It could be what kind of propels them as the 12th man. But again, as Tom's kind of mentioned, if Sterling starts, for me, if Harry Kane continues to think he's playing for Spurs, that's going to be an issue, because there's not many players that in this England team that run beyond their striker. They all play for teams where their striker is the focal point. Sancho at Dortmund has got Erling Haaland up front with him, who loves to sit on the last man. You've got Grealish with Ollie Watkins, very, a striker that likes to move around a lot. Maybe Mason Mount could have that, because he's got the experience with Havertz and Foden in their false 9 system at Manchester City. But that's the main worry for me, that it's the captaincy at Harry Kane. I don't think is necessarily right. For me, you've got, as much as I don't like him, you've got the captain of a Champions League and Premier League winning squad, who wasn't necessarily first name on the team sheet in Jordan Henderson. And I think he is vital for getting this team through this tournament with his experience. And whilst he may not be the first name on the team sheet, or even on the team sheet at all, he's going to be huge for this side.
I wonder if that's why they took him, even with his fitness doubts, whether he's quite a big influence in the dressing room as well. That's something that jumps out. And just very briefly, before we move on to me and Lana getting the chance to gush over our respective following team, giving Scotland...
You forgot about Scotland.
You forgot about Saka as well. I
did forget about Saka.
Where's the respect?
I was trying to not be biased, but he's brilliant, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Saka is brilliant.
He will be the surprise player for you guys, in my opinion.
I don't think he'll get a game.
I don't think he'll get a game.
No,
either.
I don't think. No. I can't see Southgate play. I'd love to see him play, but I don't think he'll play, and that's the thing that I worry about Southgate. I think he's too secure in what he does, and he does. I don't think he'll get. I don't think he'll get a minute unless there's a flood of injuries to the point where he physically has to play him. As much as I'd love to see him, even as somebody who follows United, I'd love to see him play, but I don't think he'll get the game time.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, it will be someone like, Grealish gets in ahead of him for me, unless you're playing Grealish centrally, in which case there's a place for Saka. But you know what Southgate's going to do, and he's going to put Sancho over there, or he's going to put Rashford there.
Yeah, he'll play Rashford at left wing.
He'll play Rashford at left wing, or Raheem Sterling. Remember, you still got to get Sterling into this squad as well. Saka's only chance is if Luke Shaw's stuck behind Greggs and eating out the bins, and Chilwell walks past and slips over a steak bake and puts himself out for the tournament. That's the only way I can see Saka getting minutes here. It'll be a great experience for him, but I think that's all it's going to be. And then talking about the Scotland side as well, because I forget, we completely missed Scotland. There's going to be something about that Wembley game. There's going to be some added fire in the belly for Scotland wanting to repeat anything. And I have a feeling they're going to do England for a draw in that game.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that might happen as well.
I think if it does happen, Southgate's got to walk even if he wins Euro 2020, because he can't be seen dead anywhere if he gives the Scots anything.
Josh, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but home advantage means jack shit. You're still going to lose a Euro final. Just look at us. We match fixed our whole way to the final, lost to Portugal, who also match fixed their way to the final. So, home advantage doesn't mean much.
Exactly.
Be realistic.
We'll see. I'll be realistic. I think we'll draw against Scotland.
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with this, but this whole issue of I shouldn't say this whole issue because it's a very big issue, but this controversy about the taking of the knee and there's a lot that's come out of it. I wonder if actually this home advantage thing might actually be a bit of a negative for England, because the fan base seems very divided, and I don't particularly give a toss. Who cares about my views on this one? If you boo the taking of the knee, you are more than likely fundamentally racist. That's just a fact. If you want to deny that, and if you want to sling tweets my way about that, feel free, go for it. I will ignore you all and probably block you all as well. But hopefully our listeners have got more sense than to suggest otherwise. But I say that because the manager has come out and said, we're not doing this. This is not a Marxist movement. This is not a political movement. This is our players standing up for what they believe in and making a stand. That's the only reason. And I agree with various other pundits who said, if you don't like it, just sit quietly and say nothing. You don't need to boo. You don't need to make a show of it. And there was very noticeably, the claps drowned out the boos in the end, didn't there? So there's a clear divide, almost I don't want to trivialize it, but almost a sort of a WWE type fan, booing one side and cheering the good guy on the other side. I just wonder if we might get a bit of a toxic environment in the stands for England fans.
I would say it completely depends on who gets in. Based on some third-hand experience of what happened at the Riverside. One of my colleagues was at the game. I won't go into too much of he said, she said, based on what occurred at that, but to say there were more people in that stadium than the capacity was meant to be, and that there were people who fundamentally went in to boo and then left.
Yeah,
that's all they went to do.
They should get stabbed sideways. I can stab them one by one.
And I will say it depends purely on who gets in. The balancing system, it helps, but fundamentally, if you were England home and away already, you've got tickets to this tournament. If that's the core support base that was where the booing was coming from, then that's the worry. If it wasn't, which from what I've heard, it was locals going in and not necessarily the core Club Wembley group that were at the boos. I think it will be interesting to see what happens. I think when the tournament's in full swing, I think a lot of people will forget about their prejudice. Can't say the word. You know what the ones I mean? Yeah. Against their prejudice. And it will be a case of they'll just be supporting the team because they'll want to win. Whilst it's a friendly, they feel like the opportunity's there. When it's this is affecting the players, you've got to be a supporter. I think there's a great James O'Brien clip at the moment of speaking to somebody who was there that did boo and is part of the Club England or Club Wembley travelling party. They're supporters. We're supporters. Support is the first line of what you should be doing. And if it's going to put any players off their game by booing them, it's not going to be helpful for us winning a tournament. Which I think you could say at club level as well, irrespective of why you're booing a player. May not be for Black Lives Matter. It might be just because they're shit. It doesn't necessarily help them.
No, I agree. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. And one thing's for sure, we're all going to look like utter muds when the mighty Scots top the group, having won all three of their games at the end of it, when it all shakes out. And jokes aside, looking at that Scotland squad, there is a bit of talent in there, to be fair. Kevin Nisbet, the young forward up front, is one who's sort of going under the radar. Billy Gilmore has big things thought of him at Chelsea. Stuart Armstrong at Southampton, Callum McGregor of Celtic, John McGinn of Aston Villa. Scott McTominay's probably had his best season for Manchester United since he's broken through. A couple of very good players there. We know about Robertson and Kieran Tierney as far as fullbacks. So and Ross would kill me if I didn't mention Shay Adams, sort of naturalised Scottish. So there's enough in that Scottish side that could cause a few upsets if given the opportunity. Right, you've had your England time. Settle back, because Lana and I are gonna talk a bit of Sweden and a bit of France in a second, but we'll still bring you in. Don't worry. Group E then. Lana, I'll start with you on this one. So Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden. both you and I have a little bit of a soft spot for Sweden. You because of your upbringing and having lived in Sweden, and me just because I love Henrik Larsson and Martin Dahlin and Thomas Ravelli from the '94 squad. What a squad that was! Good times. Back in the days when Thomas Brolin wasn't fat. Yeah, great times. And I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Sweden, so I'll be backing them to hopefully come through. Probably in second, I think, if we're realistic, because Spain are probably the favourites. But would it be fair to say it's not exactly a vintage Spanish squad without the likes of Ramos and a few household names this year?
I hadn't heard of half. Okay, I think with the exception of Morata and a few players, I hadn't heard of 90% of that squad. So I was like, but then again, it's Spain, so I wouldn't, underestimate them. I don't think Sweden will come second because I don't want to, rule out Poland with Lewandowski, who just seems. He was on fire before his injury. I don't know if he's back to full fitness. I mean, they have a good squad in general. So, but again, there's also a Sweden without Zlatan who, made his famous comeback after 5 years, much like Benzema did, but now has been ruled out with an injury. They do have an exciting young squad. I mean, they have Kulusevski, who plays at Juventus, Forsberg, who plays at Leipzig, Alexander Isak, who plays in Spain for Real Sociedad. Jordan Larsson as well. I mean, so, and much like Denmark, Sweden collectively just do so well together. I mean, there's just that sense of pride putting on that shirt and giving their all for it. Much like, these lesser, more popular teams, there's just a different vibe to them. If you're going to compare them with the big favorites. So I wouldn't underestimate Sweden. They could come best third as well. I mean, there's 4 spots open. I think it could go anyway. It depends. The opening game in that group is Spain and Sweden. So Sweden doesn't have a home advantage as much as Josh has been harping about it for the past 45 minutes. But, Sweden has had some classic and amazing results in the past. The amazing 4-4 against Germany. So I wouldn't. I think they would do well. To be honest, I'm very excited, especially by Kulusevski, Isak in particular, especially since he's had a good season in Spain. I'm excited to see how he does. My big concern is Janne, who can just actually eat a bun and choke, because he is all about defense. And Sweden, if you put them in a beautiful attacking formation, they just floor into a big butterfly and would be amazing to watch. But then again, it's all about being defensively solid. That's more important than scoring goals, which could be a main concern in a group where you have, someone like Lewandowski, someone like Spain, who's known for their attacking football. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And I love the fact Seb Larsson is still a Swedish international after all these years. That's good to see. As is Andreas Granqvist, who must be getting his 40s by now. But yeah, a couple of good players. For anyone who hasn't followed Spanish football or doesn't have a bit of a foot in the Swedish camp, if you haven't watched Alexander Isak, please just watch one game that he starts, if he starts, because this kid has so much. Big, powerful, strong, quick, skillful, just everything in a modern centre forward. He's so good, and potentially has a very big career ahead of him. I think he went to Sociedad permanently from Dortmund, didn't he, in the end? But I don't think he'll be at Sociedad for long if he keeps up the form he showed this year. I will just bring Tom and Josh in briefly on this group. Josh, I'll give you Poland. Is it all about Robert Lewandowski? Is it all about him in terms of Poland? Because we've been here before, haven't we? Where we've looked at the Polish squad, we've got lots of talent, etc., and so on, and then they've just stoked the place out. So, is this the Polish squad that potentially, finally, we might see something good from?
Well, I think it's again based on the quality of their under-21s coming through. So I'm going to go with my exciting player to look at is Jakub Moder. I'm sure anybody who has got the Wikipedia up and looks at the club they play for, or he plays for, they'll realise why I'm picking Jakub Moder over other people. I believe who got his debut goal against England only a few weeks ago in the last group. But yeah, he's one that I would have a look out for in their midfield. Again, we can name like the Zielinski at Napoli. This is all very much a great ensemble of players. I'm sure Wojciech Szczesny will be in goal. Bednarik at the back. It's how they can mold together and make sure they create enough chances for Lewandowski. I think that's fundamentally the biggest thing here for them, is creating those chances, because you can have the greatest striker in the world up front, but if you don't give him the chances, he's not going to get any goals for you. And that's going to be the big one for them. So yeah, that's where I'd be slightly because every time England have drawn Poland, which they do many a time, we either get lucky and Lewandowski isn't there, or you just don't create enough for him. And they ask a bit too much from him. And yeah, as you say, with coming back from his injuries, how much running has he got in him to really carry that side? Or is it time for these kind of younger guys coming through to really put some energy into this side and help him out a bit? Because fundamentally he's a goal machine, and you've just got to make sure he's being fed.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think Arkadiusz Milik had a really good end to the season on loan at Marseille from Napoli as well. So if you get the two of those firing, that potentially has goals written.
He's out injured.
Oh, is he? Is he?
He got ruled out. Got ruled out 2 days ago because I just saw Marseille fans crying, much to my pleasure.
That slipped under my radar, so that is a shame. So in that case, then the goals are very much going to be relied upon through Lewandowski. But yeah, good to see that Kamil Glik and Grzegorz Krychowiak are still in that squad. I think again they're both about 50 by now, so that's good to see. Another player to probably look out for is Carol Linetti, who's a very underrated midfielder who plays at Torino in Italy. And for Premier League fans, you might recognise the name Mateusz Klich from Leeds as well. He's one of the fundamental midfielders. So that just leads me to give Tom Spain. Lana mentioned it there, Tom. Spain's squad is it's a bit different. I think it's fair to say. We've got the wonderful French legend Aymeric Laporte coming into the Spanish squad this year. That's an interesting one. We've got Brazilian-born Thiago Alcantara. We've got German-based Dani Olmo. I could go on here, but there's quite a few different names in this Spanish squad. A lot of the household names are no more. Any of those that stand out for you? I think the one that I'm kind of excited to see is Pedri, the young Barcelona player. But also Mikel Oyarzabal had a really good season at Sociedad, and mentioned Dani Olmo at Leipzig for in the Bundesliga. Any of those players that stand out for you though? Because to me on paper it doesn't look like a vintage Spanish squad.
No,
there's no Madrid players either. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I remember seeing that the other day. I was amazed by that. I think this kind of reminds me of the slightly older Spanish teams like from a few years ago before they started going on the World Cup win, the Euro win, where they had some good players here and there, but the fundamentals of their squad were decent, but they weren't anything like when they had the Xavis, the Iniestas, Ramos in his peak as well. So I think it's kind of a mismatch that you mentioned, and a couple of players in there. I think Ferran Torres as well, from what I've seen from a couple of like friendlies and other international games, he seems to be kind of their go-to for a goal or two here or there. And I think Gerard Moreno as well. See, wiping away the tears from the United game. He's, from what I believe, he's banged quite a few goals in this season. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets quite a lot of game time. I don't know. I believe they'll probably start Morata maybe over the top of him, but it'll be interesting to see if he gets a platform to try and perform. But they do have still quite a lot of experience in there. De Gea, Jordi Alba's in there as well, obviously, and Koke as well. I think they're all very, very good, experienced players. I do worry if it goes to penalties and David De Gea's in goal that anyone with a blindfold on their legs tied could probably still score against him. But I think Adama Traore as well was an interesting one to see. I think he's a bit of he seems to be their wild card from what I see. If you bring him on in extra time, any left back is going to absolutely cack it. Because I think he might just, although he's not the most serene and beautiful footballer, he's so direct, so fast, and so powerful that sometimes in those games where you need that extra something, he might be that X factor that they look to.
Chaos theory almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if Luis Enrique wasn't the manager, Adama Traore wouldn't be near the Spain squad.
I tend to agree
for me,
with that, actually.
because he's a player. I remember Nuno saying that when he came into Wolves from it was from Villa, they had to say to him, "You're going to beat anybody with your pace, but you just need to slow down and actually pass the ball, because his end product is shocking, absolutely shocking." And for me, Ferran Torres is the standout player.
Yeah, Sergio Busquets is still there as well. I'd like to anchor that midfield. And Marcos Llorente, who's been brilliant for Atletico Madrid, who of course won the league in La Liga this season, he's probably going to be a key part to that.
Busquets
midfield.
is out with COVID.
Oh God! See, I'm doing really well here, aren't I?
The entire Spanish squad, I think, is on lockdown at the moment.
Self-isolating, aren't they? Yeah,
they're getting vaccinated.
Because Robert Sanchez has also been diagnosed with COVID.
So is Busquets actually ruled out, or was it just that he's self-isolating until he's available?
He's out. He's out with COVID. So I don't know if he's been withdrawn from it. But they called up 6 more players just because they were worried about a COVID outbreak.
Crikey! So I mean, I think they were the main team of all of the squads that have been the biggest effect from COVID symptoms. So that would be a worry for them. So it might end up being a very different squad entirely. But Adama Traore fully greased up in the summer sunshine, that will be quite the thing to see. Right, one more group to go then. And Lana, this is where we'll have some fun, hopefully. The first question I'm just going to ask you, Group F, of course, it is classed as a group of death. France, Germany, Hungary, and Portugal, as we mentioned. Do you have any slight concerns? Because I do.
We're going out.
Well, this is my worry. Like, everybody's basically bigging up France, as they rightfully should, because on paper, France are clear and away the best team in this tournament. They've got the best players. Obviously, we know about Karim Benzema's return. They look fluid in terms of that front three with Griezmann and him and Mbappe. Everything on paper says they walk this tournament and they can probably sit on the beach for most of it. That's what worries me, because every time the pressure is on France, something inevitably goes a bit wonky. Do you? Am I worrying about nothing? Are you fully confident, or have you got that nagging feeling that something might go wrong here?
Okay, so you remember, at home, I've been hyping up the under-21s, and then we just, crashed and burned and went straight to hell, and I just cried, and it was awful. And then I started to have this nagging feeling, which I got the same feeling before the Euro 2016. So I have a flashback to 2010, and we all remember that summer. We don't talk about it because it's erased, but it's just, I have no idea why I have this nagging feeling. And it's just, as you mentioned, the pressure, and it's all lined up for us to win it. But I don't know. I have a really, really bad feeling. And that's why I haven't been hyping them so much, because I don't want it to come back and bite me.
Can I ask a question about France? And this might be falling down a very atypical stereotype for the French squad.
More than likely when you say that.
Potentially down to, as you mentioned, a summer that won't be necessarily named, where buses were brought and maybe sat on for longer than they should have been.
Bullying.
Is there a chance that, and I'm not naming complete names in here, but I will include the forward that has come back in this kind of group, in terms of Benzema and others. Do you think if they're not getting the game time that they might deserve or feel they deserve, they could be rocking a boat? Or do you think they will be happy to just sit there and probably collect their medal at the end of
Because
this.
the other one we shouldn't overlook here, Lana, is Adrien Rabiot, who
That was my other one.
yeah, he essentially refused to play for the second string for France, and Deschamps said that's fine, you never play for France again. And lo and behold, he's back. And to be fair, he has been playing very well. So I don't think the talent's not in question, is it?
No, it has helped that his mom has fucked off completely.
I would agree with that statement.
It has helped that he plays now for a club that does not accept that kind of bullshit that PSG did. At Juventus, that shit doesn't fly whatsoever. Either you play where you're told to play, or you're benched, or we just dissolve your contract. Period. At our club, we don't hold the club at ransom and demand 250K a week and just sit and have back injuries. So, take note. So he has had a really good season for Juve. He's been one of the bright spots in a very depressing season, to say the least. Yes, we won 2 trophies. We qualified for the Champions League, but so he's had a really good season. I don't disagree with this call up. There's some that I disagree with. I'm heartbroken that Ferland Mendy didn't get a call up. I thought he had a really good season. Probably should have been there ahead of other names. Pretty heartbroken for Ndombele. Genuinely really, really sad that he doesn't get a call up. People tend to ask, why does Sissoko get called up? Why does Giroud get called up? Fine, we all know Giroud didn't score a single goal at the World Cup. He is still instrumental to that system. He works his ass off, and when Mbappe doesn't bother tracking back, Giroud does all the dirty work. Sissoko is also someone you can trust in that midfield, because for some strange reason, he shows up for France every time. But he doesn't for Spurs. That's the thing. I mean, Henry was great for club level. He was not so great for France. That's why he's not also very much beloved in France if you compare him to, someone like Trezeguet, who was. So people tend to question his choices, but I understand them as much as I don't agree with them. It makes sense. I still do have worries about the midfield, just because I feel that we need more creativity, because it's a very defensive midfield. I mean, with the exception of Pogba and Thomas Lamar, who's, been very much hit with injuries, the others offer more of a defensive stability than anything else.
Do you think that's a counter for the forwards though? Because I mean, we're pretty much assured that we're going to get a Griezmann, Mbappe, and Benzema forward line. That midfield three is likely to be Pogba, Rabiot, and N'Golo Kante. We've seen how good N'Golo Kante has been in recent months. We know how good Pogba can be, especially for France. And we mentioned Rabiot. So is it just a question that they just want to build a solid base to allow those three to just go and destroy teams on their own?
I think it's going to be Tolisso in midfield, just because he started him in the last 2 games, and he's playing tonight as well, and he's having a great game. I think with, Griezmann, he tracks back. I mean, Ben Yedder does the grunt work. If he's supposed to start, Dembele, that could be a concern. Mbappe doesn't track back much either, so that could be. And because our defense isn't as good as it was in the World Cup, I still maintain that Umtiti and Varane was the perfect centre-back pairing, just because it was. So if I feel we've downgraded a lot in defense compared to back then, yeah, we still have Hernandez and Pavard, but I still feel that Umtiti is going to be a huge miss. Yes, he's not been playing for Barcelona. He's been awful whenever he has played, but he was so brilliant at that World Cup. His goal against Belgium sent us to the final as well. So it was that bit of a Thuram in him. Not that we're comparing, Umtiti to one of the all greatest, but you got that small sense of it because he shares so many of the similar qualities.
Yeah.
So, but my main concern probably is that front three, just because it just seems like they're 3 best friends reunited once again. But as much as we give Giroud shit, as much as we give Giroud shit for not scoring, he's still such a huge and integral part of that, front three, because he allows them to roam freely, because he protects that front three and also offers some defensive stability to a midfield. So I don't know.
I really worry that if it doesn't, like, if they play the first game and it doesn't work out, like in the World Cup where they changed it after the first game, I worry that this year it might be Griezmann that's the scapegoat, because there's no way they're dropping Mbappe. It would be too controversial, like Josh touched on, to drop Benzema. I worry that they might either force Griezmann wide or drop him entirely to bring back Giroud, and that could upset. Or Coman, yeah, because Griezmann's been so key to this team. He scored tonight in their game against Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And as for the centre-back pairing, I agree with you. I think it's likely to be Kimpembe and Varane. Varane's had a very sort of up-and-down season with Madrid, mainly due to injuries, and obviously Madrid being a bit bipolar in their season. Kimpembe is a strange one, because I genuinely think he's got everything to be one of the great centre-backs in world football. But he just has those moments sometimes where he just loses it completely, both mentally and positionally. And yet he has the ability and athleticism to recover. And I think he's one of those defenders that he gets away with a lot because he's so quick and because he gets back in and makes those sort of goal-saving challenges, when really the reason he's had to make them is because he was out of position in the first place. So I just feel like he needs good coaching.
As long as Longley is nowhere near that starting 11, I'm happy, because genuinely he's the most overrated centre-back ever. The fact that people genuinely thought that he was better than Umtiti, please stand in front of me on the line so I can shoot you one by one.
I mean, like Longley, but I do agree.
I'm happy about Jules Koundé being called up. Yeah. I'm really happy. He was pulled from the under-21s. Sad that Awad isn't there. I think that he would have offered something special, much like Fekir did as well, because you need that creativity in midfield. Happy to see Zuma back as well. I think he's, earned a place back. So it just depends on who the fullback's going to be. I mean, we all know that Lloris will start because he's the captain. It would have been nice to see, Lille or Milan's new goalkeeper. Because he's had such a sensational season for Lille. Yeah. But being the captain, there's no way he's going to drop him.
No.
Unless they're like top and he can play against Hungary.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I am worried. And we don't even have home advantage.
I was going to say, we're both on the same page. So in the interest of fairness, it's only fair that we bring in the other two and round this off with the views on the other ones. I'll go to Tom first of all. Tom, I'm going to give you Portugal. We'll cover Hungary as a group, but I'll give you Portugal as the one to focus on for yourself. I mean, we mentioned the fact they are the current European champions. They are holders of the trophy. We know that they've got Ronaldo, so I mean that kind of goes without saying in terms of what he can bring to that particular squad. I don't really know what to make of Portugal, because I look at the squad. I've got it in front of me now, and you look at some of the players. You're guaranteed at least 4 penalties in this tournament, thanks to Bruno Fernandes. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Waiting for that. I was waiting for
it. But let's be fair. He's a very, very good player, and can run a midfield. You got João Felix, who he's flattered to deceive, but we know there's a player in there who's just waiting to burst through. Andre Silva's had a great season in Germany. Renato Sanchez has actually not been brilliant for Lille in fairness this season, but has had moments where you've seen the player that he can be. And then we know about people like Ruben Neves and Pedro Gonçalves, who's a really talented midfielder. There's so much in that squad that says to me, they're going to be decent. But then I look at their defence and I see, God bless him, Jose Font is still going, and Pepe is still there, and João Moutinho is still hanging around, and Rui Patricio, you never quite know what you're going to get in goal. So I can't work them out. Do you think they are going to be the full force, or are we going to see another defensive shithousery to the later stages?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the latter. I think they, like you mentioned, that they're littered with quality in certain areas. You mentioned Ronaldo, João Felix, and then Bernardo Silva as well. So they've got a lot of good players going forwards. I think it's going to really rely on that back four. I think Ruben Diaz is going to be pivotal, I think, to that defensive line, because you mentioned Jose Fonte and Pepe. They've probably got a combined age of about 75 now between them there. that's so old. And I think that they might have an issue if they come up against like an Mbappe as soon as he starts running on them. I mean, God help him. I think even on a bike they'd struggle. It's like I think they I don't know. I think that there could be one where I anticipate they'll do really well and then do terribly badly, and then I could anticipate they do absolutely awfully, and then they, like you say, they scrape 1-0s just from that one little bit of quality from one of the many players that they know they have that can produce something, or a Bruno Fernandes penalty, and then next thing you know, they're in the final. I think they're one that they shouldn't be overlooked. Sorry, what was that, Lana?
Lana on a match fixing run.
Yeah.
And the coach is still the same. I think I'm right in saying Fernando Santos is the coach who won it with them last time. Yeah. No, I agree with you. On paper there's a hell of a squad there, but I can't sort of get past the idea.
It's going to be so hit or miss. It'll be interesting to see if Renato Sanchez turns up again like he did that time when he burst onto the scene, because he seems to be a completely different player on his day for Portugal. Yeah,
he's a strange one, because I say, like, he's a very fashionable player. He's a very hipster player, ironically given our podcast name, and he played his part in Lille's sort of win Ligue 1's title challenge and ultimate win this season. But I wouldn't say he hasn't been as good as the likes of Benjamin Andre, who went under the radar in that Lille midfield. He kind of came in, did his part, and then kind of came out again. Yeah,
but so did Fonte. He did really well against both the games against PSG. So
he did, yeah, that's fair.
He showed that he can, keep Neymar, Mbappe, Icardi, Musakina at bay. I think they won the games as well. 1-0. Neymar got sent off the last game.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's only really pace that Fonte struggles against. As an out-and-out defender, he's still very, very decent. And
I think it helps as well that Portugal with Semedo. I'm not sure if they play Cancelo at left back or whether they go with Guerrero. I can't remember exactly which way it goes.
Guerrero's been in recently, but I think they have been playing Cancelo ahead of Semedo, I think, for memory.
Yeah, because luckily he's obviously got that little bit of pace that might be able to cover up a little bit some of the faults with that potential centre back partnership being a bit sluggish.
Yeah, true.
Isn't their goalkeeper injured? I think Lopez is starting. That's what he did in the last.
I did hear some rumours about Patricia being it. I didn't know whether they were right or not. So if that is the case, then Lopez could come in, and I know you love him as a Lyon person.
We might have a chance of beating Portugal because he's been shit this season.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's so erratic. He makes those unbelievable saves and then drops one in his own net. I can never quite work it out.
Do you know how many points he cost us this season?
Exactly. That's
14. The game against what was it, Lille?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh Christ, yeah.
I cried the whole night. I genuinely cried.
Yeah.
I was like, blocked everything, left Twitter, everything. I was like, nope, I'm done with this. I'm done with football.
But on his day, sort of almost Jordan Pickford-esque, he can turn in a 10 out of 10 and you think he's a brilliant goalkeeper again. It's very bizarre. But and the point about Guerrero, I think, is very valid, because he's been brilliant for Dortmund this season and has often done that, covering in behind the likes of Mats Hummels in Dortmund, where he's been beaten for pace. Guerrero's come out of nowhere and made tackles. So it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a Lorient legend, of course. Josh, talk to me about Germany, because being heavily in the England camp, I'm sure it won't have missed your gaze that that England-Germany is very much on the cards in this particular tournament. You mentioned the scratch and sniff manager, outward departing manager, we should say at this point. Has he got enough? Has he got enough in this German squad to come back? I literally mentioned Hummels coming back. We know Thomas Muller's come back. Kai Havertz finished the season very well with Chelsea. Timo Werner, not so well. Kevin Vollander's been brilliant for Monaco and rightfully got his return to the German national squad. And we all know, Premier League fans will know about the season that Ilkay Gundogan's had. And then the rest of it, pretty standard. Gnabry, Sane, Klosterman's been very good for Germany. Ginter's been very good in the Bundesliga. What do you make of Germany? Are we going to see a colossal fall apart once again, or are they going to go out with a bang before Joachim Low retires or moves on, I should say?
I think the thing that actually helps them is the fact that Jogi Löw has said that he's going, because he's going to keep it simple. He's not going to, this is a bit like, I see it as Fergie's last season at Man United, where he was just like, actually, I'll get in a load of big guns. I don't necessarily need to pave the way. In the ideal scenario, I'd leave this great. I'd integrate a load of youngsters in, but you can see this. He's brought in Thomas Muller, as you say. He's come back into the team. He's gone with experience. There isn't, there was rumours of who would be like even the third choice goalkeeper might be one of the youngsters coming in. No, but Leno's there again.
Kevin Trapp as well, yeah.
Kevin Trapp as well.
He's so pretty.
Is coming in as well. For me, they seem like a team that they don't really necessarily have a striker that puts the fear of God into me. Even as England, we've got a shaky defence. The player that I think could really stand out and make it his own, because I think we saw glimpses in the World Cup of this. Serge Gnabry. For me, I think the false 9 position he was taking for Bayern Munich only a couple of seasons ago, when Lewandowski was out, looked very sharp there. Looked like he's got a great eye for goal and a hell of a shot on him as well. I think he might be one to look out for. The partnership that he's got with Leroy Sana on the opposite flank for Munich as well. I think it's very much going to be all about the boys from Munich. The only real, I'd say, I know Kai Havertz is relatively young at 22, but the proper youngster and the standout is Jamal Musiala from Bayern, 18-year-old. There were delusions of grandeur from England that we might be able to get hold of him due to the fact he was born in England but completely raised in Germany. And I think one more cap seals him as a German player. So he looks really interesting from the same stuff I've seen from him doing at Bayern. Only getting small cameos, but looks really, really interesting player. I think is probably one to watch if he ever gets a chance on the field. I think the way everything's kind of panned out, it might be have a look at their final games against Hungary. That's where I'd expect to see a player like that make it. But otherwise, I think it's going to be very efficient. It's going to be the team that you'll assume full of experience from Jogi Löw. He's not going to mess around with anything. I would be very surprised, even to the point where if Joshua Kimmich is playing in central midfield, I think he's going to go back to basics. That's Kimmich at right back. And then just a case of, the midfield of Goretzka in there, Tony Cruz. And he's going to go with reliable players in there and not necessarily mess around too much with it.
Yeah, agreed. It's on paper, it does look like there's enough there. Leon Goretzka is another one that on his day can run any team off the pitch, and Joshua Kimmich has been brilliant for Bayern Munich as well. There is a fantastic pun for those of you who have a 12-year-old sense of humour like I do. You could put together this sentence, Gunter Trapp Cock. So, for those of you who are just sipping up now, please do it with care, because trust me, that hurts. You only ever do it once in life. Once is all you need to do.
Kevin Bolan, is this his first tournament? Because he's had a great season for Monaco. Yeah. He's
been fantastic. Yeah, he has.
You put the fear on God in me, to be honest, Josh, because when we faced them, I was like, we're so losing. But we won.
I think it is one of those groups, isn't it? I think the first game is going to be really, really important in terms of sort of setting the tone, or the first games, I should say, in terms of setting the tone for who progresses, because you just feel like it's going to be all about momentum in that one, and whoever ends up losing that first game scrolls down. France, Germany, of course, opens it up. I think that's next Tuesday, and that's in Munich, and then Hungary, Portugal. I think essentially if there's 2 wins from those 2 games, those 2 teams have got a massive advantage, because if Portugal can take points off Hungary or vice versa, and there is a winner between France and Germany, suddenly it puts one of the big guns, sort of at a disadvantage. But as we've mentioned before, and as you said at the off, Josh, Hungary might sit there and think, well, should we just pack our bags now, guys? Because, one of these 3 is probably going to finish third and we're going to be left behind. But I don't think we should underestimate Hungary, because every time you do that, you do it at your peril. And they are, there's enough players. I think Szoboszlai is going to miss the tournament, isn't he? And he's their big hope. So that's a bit of a blow. I'm just looking at the rest of their squad there. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of players I have never heard of, and trust me, I like.
You do worry when I believe you do worry when it's Adam Bogdan that stands out too.
Yeah, Adam Bogdan, the ex-Liverpool player. Yeah, they have got Willi Orban, who's a pretty consistently good centre back at Leipzig in Germany, and Adam Slazai. That name rings a bell. I think he's drifted around Europe. So I mean. Is it Adam Nagy? Isn't he at Brentford, or wasn't he at Brentford?
I think he was. He's at Bristol City from.
Bristol City. No, is it okay?
He's Bristol City.
Yeah. I may be making that up. Maybe it was Bristol City.
Not at Brentford. He's at Bristol City.
Cool.
Never played for Brentford. I think the only time he's ever been in Brentford is when he played away to them.
Well, that counts. I'll take that.
Yeah,
I've just completely made it up and transformed it. Adam Saslai, by the way, plays at Mainz in Germany. So, yeah, that name definitely ring a bell. But, yeah, looking down the rest of their squads, there's a lot of players I don't know a lot about. Nemanja Nikolic, actually, is another one who is still playing. He's the forward. So, where is he playing now? He is playing in Fevra. Crikey. Well, there's a thing. But yeah, I don't give them too much hope, if I'm honest. I hate to be obvious, but I just don't.
Don't jinx it.
So, no, we shall see. Right. We've got a little bit longer than we planned, but it's the first show. So yeah, from here on in, there'll probably be around about an hour, but for the preview show, we've gone a little bit more in depth because we wanted to get all the teams covered. Just a quick look ahead then to what we're looking at in terms of the games kicking off. So on Friday the 11th of June, as I say, we're recording this on the 8th of June, so 3 days time, Stadio Olimpico in Rome sees Turkey and Italy kick off the tournament. I'm sure there'll be some horrendous opening ceremony where Diana Ross kicks a penalty and the goal eats David Guetta whole, and Snoop Dogg orders some takeaway on the pitch or something. Something will happen like that. So if you want to tune in just for the game, kicks off at 8 o'clock UK time. If you want to watch all the bullshit beforehand, maybe take the afternoon off work, get comfortable about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's usually how long these opening ceremonies are. So that'll be good viewing for you. On the Saturday, you've got 3 games. Wales, Switzerland kicks us off at 2 p.m. These are all UK times, I should say. Denmark, Finland, that's probably one for the purists at 5 p.m. Belgium, Russia is the 8 o'clock game, all in Group A, or the other game Group A and the other two in Group B. Group D on Sunday, England get their campaign off and running on BBC TV Sport, I'm reliably informed, which I think is just BBC One in the UK. England, Croatia is 2 p.m. Austria, North Macedonia, speaking of purist games, that's 5 p.m. And then Group C also has Holland or Netherlands against Ukraine at 8 p.m. And then on the Monday, you have Scotland opening their campaign up against the Czech Republic. Poland face Slovakia, and Spain, Sweden, which I'm sure Lana and I will be tucking into on Monday night at 8 p.m. And finally, those 2 remaining games we just mentioned, Hungary against Portugal. Christ, that really would be harsh on Hungary to put Holland in as well. Hungary against Portugal is the 5 p.m. game, and France against Germany, which I'm pretty sure will have a large viewing figure on the evening. That's in Munich. That's 8 p.m. on Tuesday the 15th. And we'll probably squidge a pod in somewhere in and around after that game on the 15th. So it may not be that night, but it'll probably be that week, just before the other games get underway. So before we round off the show, of course, I have to ask you all the inevitable question. Who's going to win it, and who are your dark horses? So for those of you who I don't pick on first, unlucky Tom, because I'm coming to you first. You two
it's like last time.
Yeah, I've set you up here. Who are you backing? I mean, we know obviously you'd like it to be England, but taking off your England hat, who are your favourites, and who do you anticipate might shock a few people?
I think you'd be dumb not to paint the obvious and say that I think France will be the favourites. I think the depth of their squad and the quality that they have, and I'm not sucking up, I promise. But yeah, I think they're probably my go-to. I think that they're my favourite anyway. That I'd say. I think as a stand-up potential underdog, I think Italy might surprise a few people. I think they do have a lot of quality in that team that a lot of people might not potentially not know about from whether they might not watch too much Serie A, but there are some really good players in that team, and I think they can do a job. So I think they might put together some form of run. But as I quickly mentioned, France. Sorry, guys, I'm just going to squeeze the question in to you and Lana, because that France squad is absolutely stacked through. And it almost seems like you take one player out and you can put another one in. But is there a particular one player that you'd look at and your stomach will kind of sink a bit if they were to suddenly get a knock and then they can't suddenly play for the tournament? Do you think that will have such a big effect on that team?
I don't know about you, Lana, but there is one that immediately jumps to mind, a certain number 7. But sorry, not even for France, a certain number 10 for France, I should say, in Kylian Mbappe. But
me, speaking of injuries, Benzema just went off with an injury and Giroud came on, but it's just a knock. For me, it's 2 players, Rafael Varane, just because he's so integral to that back, and Griezmann. Just because
that's the one I was going to go with. Yeah, I think he's huge for that team.
So do you guys not think? Do you guys not think Kante is? Do you think he's one that's more easily replaced? Because when I look at that French side, I think the work that he does in any team that he's in gets quite overlooked. Do you think he's one as well, or?
Yeah, we have. Not that it's easy to replace him, but I wouldn't be so worried about midfield just because we have very good. Not replacements, but options. You have, Tolisso. He's so extremely versatile. Literally can play anywhere, with the exception of goalkeeper. You have Rabiot, Pogba, Thomas Lemar as well. Sissoko puts in a good shift when needed. I mean, I know people will be like, "What, Sissoko?" But for me, Varane is just like the boss of that defense. And when you don't have Umtiti anymore, who was so integral in the World Cup win, Varane is basically, because Lloris is like a headless chicken. I mean, he's so fucking useless. And Griezmann doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion, enough respect.
Massively underrated, I agree.
Yeah. Because he just happens to love to make videos and he's a dork when it comes to video games, fine, but he's just so amazing for France, and Barcelona screwed them for ruining him as well. So for me, Griezmann is more important just because you have someone who can not replace Mbappe, but you have, the likes of Coman, Wissam Ben Yedder, and Marcus Thuram. Forgot to mention him. He's gotten us, he's going to be super exciting to watch as well. But just Griezmann offers so much, not just in terms of attack, but just, the link up with midfield and his amazing work rate in terms of tracking back as well. So, Griezmann and Varane for me.
And just to add to that, I agree with Lana's point there. I think the only thing with Kante, and there's no denying he's absolutely vital to any team because he's that good. Clearly, we know that. But I think if he was to get a knock or was to be injured, I think France would actually change their system. I think you'd probably see a more rigid kind of 4-2-3-1, and you'd have, like Lana said, you'd have a player at the base of that defensive, probably in the Rabiot. They would, I would imagine, drop Pogba potentially a bit deeper to play as more of a box-to-box, and then they would play like a Benzema or a Giroud as a focal point, Mbappe and Griezmann from behind him with, I think, a winger would come in. I think you see Coman come into the side if that's what happens. I think they probably change the system. So, and that's what makes them one of the favourites, I think, just because there's so many different options and so many different styles that they can adapt.
Just the versatility of the players in general. That's what's so beautiful about French players. They literally can play in 2 different positions.
It's something that the Spanish always used to be brilliant at, and maybe not so much now, but in the days, the tiki-taka era, you could literally play any of their midfield 4 or 5 in any position, and they could alternate. Iniesta could drift wide at times. He wouldn't have pace to beat somebody, but he would drift out wide, and it would free up the space for somebody to run through that middle channel. And the likes of Fabregas used to run out of position into the 10s, and then next thing you'd see him defensive. They just had that fluid style. France seem to have taken that on. So, it will be interesting to see. Josh, you've had more than enough time now, so it's your turn. Your favourites and your dark horse?
I think my favourites, I think the final is going to be played as a group game as well. I think the final comes out of Group F. And for me, I think Portugal, as great as France are also, as we kind of alluded to, it can be their own worst enemy as well. This France team is only going to lose if they will it to. They will it to. This Portuguese team, looking through their squad, for me, it is almost just as strong. You've said that France have got question marks at centre back and at goal. Because of the want of playing Kimpembe, not necessarily. I'm sure people could build a decent French centre-back pairing, but I think Portugal similar, but I can see them creating goals and creating chances. And just, we saw from the Euros that Ronaldo isn't they don't rely on him. You know, we can name 5 other players that will grab goals for them. They've got a midfield that they can do things with, depending on what's going on in the tournament. And yeah, I would then go for dark horses as Denmark, who I think make the quarterfinals.
Okay.
From that one, because I think that group, that's gettable. They can get out of that. And then I think the round of 16, if they get lucky, they top the group with a good result against Belgium, then they get a third place team as their opponent. So I think that could be an interesting one to look at. I think on England, I'd be surprised if they make it to the quarterfinals.
I see what you're doing there. I see right through it. I know what you're doing. You can't.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're doing. I get it.
No!
Don't pull that bullshit with us.
The English teams or the English squad has played the most minutes of any squad across this season.
Yeah,
across this season, every single player has played a fuck ton of games.
We shouldn't forget the fact there is a 5 sub rule for the first time ever in this tournament, isn't there, as well? So you will see, I think, a lot of teams pulling the old, what we called the Arteta, the sort of like, let's make a drastic change midway through a game and change the whole system. So I think substitutions are going to be really important, and especially in the latter stages when you get to games that are really close and might end up in extra time, and you can suddenly bring on 4 new players at the end of the game. That's going to be massive. So, yeah, I can see that. And, of course, speaking of Portugal, Ronaldo, potentially his last big tournament. I mean, he would have you believe otherwise, but
he says imagine. He's retiring after Qatar.
Is he? Okay, well, there you go. I mean, we've heard him say certain things in the past, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. Okay, Lana, I'm guessing you're probably with me in terms of your favourites, but I could be wrong, maybe. And have you got a dark horse as well?
Well, my favorites, obviously France. I put Portugal up there as well. I have this nightmare scenario that they will end up in the final and it will be a repeat of the Euro final, just because, my dark horse is the same as Josh, actually. It's Denmark. And I have a feeling they will probably maybe face off Sweden. And it will be like a full-on Scandinavian
derby,
yeah, basically, which would be amazing to watch. My money, it's Denmark, probably Denmark or Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries, just because no one expects them to do anything.
They're always ruled out, aren't they? And there's always one that goes deep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I'm sure the listeners want to know mine. I'm sure they don't really, but I mean, I find it hard. As much as I like Lana, I have worries. I do have concerns. I still think I think it's France's to lose. Basically, I think they are rightfully the favourites, but a lot will determine where they finish in that group and what momentum they can build and how fast. But I do think that on their day, that strike force can blow away any team in this tournament. Defensively is where I worry. Dark horses. It's not really a dark horse because I think a lot of people fancy them. They've come up before in World Cups and people have said this for years and they keep on letting us down. But I just think that this Belgian side is too good to keep failing at this level, even though they've got a questionable manager in Martinez. I'm not 100% sure I quite buy into his methods or his sound bites. There's a little bit Brendan Rodgers about him for me, but I just look at that squad and I just think there's too many in-form, talented players. And yes, again, defensively, any defense that still relies on Alderweireld, Vermaelen and Vertonghen is probably going to be susceptible. But when you can field a forward line of an in-form and hungry Lukaku, as much as I, still have some question marks about his longevity beyond one good season. De Bruyne, we know, is world class in his day. It's not just those. I think it's the players that people maybe are not focusing on, because most people do focus on the names. But you look at someone like Yannick Carrasco, who people forget essentially went to China to earn lots of money and then came back to Atletico Madrid and has been fantastic this season. Axel Witsel on his day is a world-class midfielder and can run any game. Hans Vanaken, who a lot of people won't know a lot about in midfielder for Anderlecht, who's really very decent on his day. Jeremy Doku, who Lana will know a bit from Ligue 1, he's a young upcoming player who I don't think he'll start but can make an impact from the bench. And I haven't even mentioned Dries Mertens, who yet again is just one of those players who in Serie A consistently performs for Napoli, no matter how good or bad their seasons are. And that is, of course, ruling out Eden Hazard, who, again, awful season, has had a horrible time of it, but on his day, we know can win a match on his own. So that's my case I'm putting forward for Belgium.
I think it would be remiss. One of your colleagues at ABW and one of your colleagues at French Football would be very aggrieved for you not to mention Leandro Trossard, who starts for Belgium at the moment, based on old Jacket Potato, who's at Real Madrid.
yeah. Trossard, another player that every time I watch him, I'm impressed. So, yeah, given his legs, him and Carrasco on either side could be something to watch. So, yeah, they are my tips. But yeah, I think, I don't know about you guys, but as we kind of round off this preview pod, I'm kind of excited. I think we all suffered a bit from pandemic football-itis in the past 12 to 18 months. I certainly from mine and your perspective, Josh, well, actually Lana's as well, being Arsenal, Juventus and Lyon followers has not been fun for 12 months. And I'm sure the way the season ended for Tom probably wasn't exactly what he was looking for either as a Man United fan. So we've all been through the mill, I think it's fair to say.
Did they lose the final?
Yes, they did. Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned that. Maybe
I heard it from somewhere.
Yeah,
that was with the penalties, right? Oh,
that's
I'm so sorry, Tom. I genuinely don't mean to rub it in. I just do it with Josh, but I'm sorry, I didn't know. That explains why my dad has been so grumpy for the past weeks.
There you go. Yeah. You see,
would have helped if we had a goalie in for the penalties, to be honest.
Yeah, that's Spain's number one, by the way. So look out for him.
I'm worried for them for that.
But yeah, I think I speak for us all when I say we're all pretty excited by this tournament, and I think I can definitely speak for all of us and our listeners when we say it would be great to see supporters back in stadia. And although they won't be at full capacity, I think we saw towards the end of the season in the leagues that did have supporters back, even a couple of thousand made a massive difference just to the intensity of the games and the spectacle of them, and hopefully this tournament goes off without a hitch. And I think we all hope that there will not be a massive COVID-related issue in this tournament. Hopefully all the clubs, all the nations' players and individual clubs that are releasing those players get the rub of the green in terms of the illness, and hopefully we can have just a festival of football. As I say, it's over. What is it? I think it's 4 weeks, isn't it? 4.5 weeks of football we've got to enjoy. So
and Copa America starts on the 13th, so I'm not going to be sleeping at all for a month.
It's going to be all go, and all of this, and the MLS season will continue as well. Okay, maybe it's just me watching that, but still, we can have our moments. But yes, the season goes on. As I say, we will be across it, and we've got a couple of fun guests coming on. We're hopeful to try and get Joel back to talk a bit of Spain at some point. Hopefully try and find some time in the schedule to get John back on. And we might even try and convince Ross to come out of hiding if England do well in this tournament. I'm leaving that up to Josh. But and we've got a couple of guests as well. Some of you will know Carl from ABW. For those of you that cross over the pods, he's going to be coming on to do a bit of work with us as well. And a couple of other people in the pipeline. So it should be a fun time. As I say, this pod has been a bit of a bumper one. We will probably do just an hour after each set of games moving forwards. And as usual, if you have got any questions and you want to shoot them our way, probably the easiest thing is just to tweet us individually, because you'll be able to find our Twitter handles on the YouTube video, I'm sure, when we put this one up. Yeah, you can tweet us there, or you can tweet the ABW account, which of course, thank you to Danny and everyone at ABW for hosting us on this platform, because it makes life a whole lot easier than Josh and myself having to run websites and RSS feeds and all of that technical shit that I don't understand. So thank you very much to Danny for allowing us onto this platform. So yes, that is it for our Euro preview. Thank you very, very much for tuning in if you did. And as we depart ahead of the Euros, I do just want to say a massive thank you to all of you that reached out after our comeback pod, which seemed like forever ago now. But when we did that sort of one-off Do You Still Like Us pod, we got a really good download rate. We got loads of really positive feedback, lots of listens, and that's essentially what twisted my arm to give up my evenings for the Euros and continue with this. So thank you very much. So I'm going to stop rambling. Lana, thank you for coming back. Much appreciated. Hopefully we'll see your less scarred face for the next one, if you can heal up from your attacks and cupboards.
You will. I will be sporting my Zidane shirt for good luck.
Splendid. My France shirt is in the mail. I'm reliably informed it should be with me tomorrow. So I went with the home in the end because I was worried about getting the white one dirty. Tom, thank you very much for coming on, sir. And I would wish England all the best, but I'd be lying if I said I would actually want to do that. So
No, that's right. I'm awaiting for the inevitable disappointment of a first round knockout if we're lucky. So thank you for having me again.
You're very welcome. And Josh, I'm looking forward to you giving us all the Ukraine updates as they massacre the rest of Europe on their way to a triumphant final with a load of players that nobody's actually ever heard of. And Andrei Shevchenko lifts the trophy aloft. So I'm relying on you for that.
I mean, I can't wait. Anyone who's more exciting to watch than England at the moment will be a benefit.
Good stuff. So by the end of this pod, you'll be talking with a Scottish accent, I'm sure. So we'll look at that. Great stuff. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it as my cat walks in front of the camera. Always professional. And a big shout out to the main road that I live on. If you've heard various vehicles driving past throughout this podcast, I do apologise. It's quite hot in the UK, so I've got the window open. Lesson learned. I shall be closing that for the next pod. So until next time, enjoy your opening Euros games. Do let us know if you want us to cover anything or any players or anything hipster orientated. Do let us know and we'll try and work that in. But until those first games are over, keep your beer strong. And you guys is trendy. I forgot that last time. Not this time, dear listeners. We'll speak to you very soon.